Hello, my name is Dr. Jeffrey Barsuk. I am the Robert Herstick Professor of Medicine and Medical Education at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. I currently serve as the Executive Medical Director of Northwestern Simulation. I would like to welcome you back to another podcast in our series on simulation and healthcare education. In this podcast, we will talk about what happens behind the scenes to prepare simulation-based education sessions using standardized patients. Today, I have the distinct honor of interviewing Ana Sferruzza, Director of Outpatient Simulation at Northwestern. Ana has a master's degree in information design and strategy with an emphasis on learning design. She currently oversees our standardized patient program here at Northwestern. Ana, it's an honor to interview you today.
Thank you, Jeff. It's so great to be here.
So, Ana, I don't know if you've listened to many of the podcasts in the past. I'm sure you do that every day, but we usually start the podcast with a little background information about our interviewees and how they got to where they are. And I noticed from reading your bio sketch that you were a professional actor in the past, and I think it's really interesting how that ties into your current role.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a very strange kind of career shift that I had. I wouldn't say it was at all linear, but I would say that it all connects. So at the first half of my career, I was a professional actor. I was part of the unions, and I was, privileged to work for all of the big theaters around Chicago, regionally, nationally, Steppenwolf, Goodman. And the strange thing is when an actor is in between jobs, you need to find other gigs, right? So at the time, my sister was working at Office of Medical Education, and she said, hey, there's this like job that they have where actors get to like role play cases with medical students. And so she said, don't embarrass me if you get an audition there. I did get in and just was like thrilled at this world of where, highly kind of artistic people get to help really analytical students, right? There's just sort of this art and science that happens. And the official definition of a standardized patient, or SP, as we like to call them, are actors who are trained to portray maladies or, practice communication skills, practice physical exam skills for students so that they have like a safe playground, right? To like do this with standardized patients versus like, real patients. So I kind of started as a SP and then was invited to be a trainer, standardized patient trainer, and then finally got, the honor and privilege of being able to be director of the program. So that's kind of it in a Cliff Note version.
Love it. And, for those of us that are listeners, depending on our background, we really don't get to see what goes behind the scenes to get standardized patients in these wonderful curricula up and running. And I can tell you that, as you know, I participate in some of these simulations as a facilitator or even occasionally as a learner. And I am completely struck by the fidelity and the portrayal of these standardized patients and how they get into the role, to the point where if it's a sad case, you're crying with them. If it's a happy case, you're laughing with them. So let's talk a little bit about that. So getting the actor ready for a case, either through just the actor themselves, what do they do to prepare? And how does the standardized patient trainer that you mentioned help them? And what really does a standardized patient trainer do in that process?
Yeah, those are great questions, Jeff, because I do think it seems a little bit mysterious. I think it's sort of a layered kind of process. I think the bottom line and kind of something that you learn in the theater is that you always start from a place of truth. So like when we cast and audition actors, we really want people who have not only talent, but also have the ability to kind of be as authentic as possible. And once they go through an audition process, the standardized patients then are given cases that are really written from our medical directors or the clerkship directors that really kind of focus on certain aspects that they want those learners to either practice or be assessed on. And so for the trainer, they have to look at for the SP trainer, they have to look at the cases, and usually they're kind of in components of like the patient storyline, evaluation criteria such as history items, physical exam items, and then communication feedback. And so the trainer has to kind of look at these three sections of the case and make sure that the actors understand their responsibilities within those sections, if that makes sense.
And do the actors actually have to study, like they're learning a part of the role?
Yeah, absolutely. So we ask that we will give them the case once they, say, hey, I'm good on this project. I'm available to do it. We give them the case materials. They'll take a look at it at home, and then they have hours of training with the SP trainer. So they'll have it. Now we have some hybrid of virtual trainings, and we also, of course, have in-person trainings because, as any actor will tell you, they need to have a rehearsal, right? They need to be in the environment of where they're going to actually be performing or doing the job. So that number of training hours can be anywhere between 4 to 6, depending on the complexity of the case, and also especially if it's like a very detailed physical exam checklist. We really have to actually perform that on the actor. We have to make sure they understand those physical exam maneuvers on their body. So we have kind of branches of training. If it's all communication based, we'll emphasize that. If it's a focused history and physical, we'll talk about the communication and the physical. And then if it's sort of all physical, we'll work in that realm as well.
So let's break it down, and let's kind of use an example that I know that we've done in the outpatient sim center, because I always think about Julie Vermillion, my colleagues' Breaking Bad News sessions, because I participated in it and I've been an observer in many. In those scenarios, we're teaching the learner or the participants how to break bad news using the spikes format, which we don't have to get into too much today, but using this format, we train the SP to go through a case where they're going to be told that they have a brain tumor that is likely cancer. And the actors get completely into the role, and it feels so authentic. And in the end, I'm usually in tears when I'm watching. And I just want to think about what goes into preparing for a case like that. So let's start from the top. During those cases, I know that there's multiple layers, but it includes formative skills practice as well as essentially a little mini OSCE at the end, if you want to call it that, where they're actually assessed on a checklist. And I believe even the standardized patients may give feedback during their performance. So let's start from the top. I have an idea. Pretend I'm Julie Vermillion, and I want to give this Breaking Bad News curriculum, and I'm coming to you for the first time to get ready. What do I need to do to help you get this kind of session set up with the standardized patient?
Well, I'll say that, Dr. Julie Vermillion and Dr. Gordon Wood have done an extraordinary job on that curriculum. It is just above and beyond. It's just launched a whole nother level of sophisticated and complex storylines and also portrayals that SPs can do with a learner. I think that, they come to us with these scripts that are just, already written, and, kind of the adage is if you've got a good script, you get a good actor and you kind of get out of their way. But, with a difficult topic, a conversation, you also just want to make sure that there's care that is taken for the person that is going to be role playing. And so when you introduce it to an SP, we provide that script to them. We say, these are the topics, read this just as you would if you were cast on a play or a performance, a production, a film, and say, like, are you okay with role playing these type of themes? And when they are, then you start to look at the kind of sort of the beats, as you would call it in theater, like the places that the role play are going to move or shift.
Okay, so from my understanding, then my role would be, as the creator of the curriculum, is to create a script. That would obviously make me nervous because I can script what the standardized patient's going to say, but who knows what the learner is going to say? And how do you account for that in the script?
That's a really good question, and that's a hard one. So the script is, we think that is sort of the skeleton or the backbone of like kind of the parameters of where the learner is going to go. So we ask the actor, we say, trust the script, learn everything that's on these pages to the best of your ability. And if the student goes off road, try to figure out a way to kind of get them back on the road. So it takes a really sophisticated SP to understand that. It takes a lot of good judgment, a lot of wisdom, but they know to trust words. They know to trust the storyline. So if a student is really off, if a student starts to ask questions about something that's really not applicable, that SP knows to kind of rein them back in and go back onto track, if that makes sense.
And I would think maybe for Breaking Bad news, I don't know, it might be a little easier to bring them back because I think everyone can imagine, especially an actor, what it would be like to receive bad news. And you don't have to be particularly medically trained to understand how to bring them back. All right, so let's move forward. So you have the script, and then what's the next step? So they're working on the script, they're looking at it, they're trying to memorize their part and get into the role. Then what happens?
And I think for this, because it is a simulation versus like a standardized where everybody has to almost be like a carbon copy for an assessment base, there is some give. It can kind of breathe a little bit. The main thing you want to do for a Breaking Bad case is actually not over rehearse it, because I think not only does it fatigue the performer, but it also, you start to diminish the how authentic it's going to be with whoever is role playing with them. So you just kind of want to go over kind of the places, it's the beginning, the middles, and the ends. And then, you can have a couple of sort of trial runs, and then you just let it be, because, typically we have actors that are incredibly skilled already in this type of kind of highly emotional content. So we don't kind of over rehearse them, if that makes sense, because we want them to be able to have a really authentic and real reaction based on the learner they're role playing with. So
maybe even stepping back, you see the script, and how do you cast an actor for this role?
Yeah, I mean, we do ask people, are you comfortable with role playing a difficult conversation? And that already will kind of narrow our field, because not everybody wants to do this. Not everybody's skilled in it. And then we have kind of a bank of SPs that we kind of call them the BBN SPs, like they are, kind of our rock stars at figuring out how to portray emotionally charged content in the most realistic way possible without being over the top, and also allowing the student the challenge. So we just kind of learn through using SPs what their comfort level is and what their skill set is. And from there, we start to recruit.
And then there's a certain component where the SPs are also giving feedback. I know the instructor is often observing, but the SP is often also giving feedback, maybe on the emotions elicited or how the conversation is going. How do you train them on how to give feedback? And then segue that into when they actually have to fill out an assessment form, like a checklist, or give written feedback.
That's a great thing to bring up, because Northwestern is really, we are front and center on the amount of rigor I feel that we do for communication feedback training. All of our SPs are required to go through a feedback workshop that's usually about 3.5 hours, that is done by one of our SP trainers. It covers not only written feedback, but also verbal feedback. And so it is a real important component to when we hire SPs. They really have to be, pretty good at this. And so to your question with the Breaking Bad Mastery Learning Curriculum, it is verbal feedback. And I think the feedback is always related on, as you said, the communication between the learner and the SP. What did it feel like to receive the news? What were the bumps in the road? The way that Northwestern trains feedback is that we do not tell a student what we wish they had done or what we think they should have done. We know that they're smart. We give them exactly what happened and how it made them feel, how it made the patient feel. And then we kind of say, okay, you decide what you want to do with this feedback, if that makes sense. And so that is also a nice way in the Breaking Bad to also kind of have an emotional debrief too, because then it allows the actor to have a voice with how it went after the role play.
Now, these can be, as you said, very emotionally charged. So we just did a podcast on safety environments and simulation. How do you ensure that everyone feels psychologically safe? And when I say that, yes, of course, we're not going to be completely psychologically safe there because we're dealing with a topic that is going to charge emotions.
Right.
And, we make it as safe as possible.